Okay, I can take my mask off now, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Ah. God. How's that? This would be a good way to start the show, right? This darn mask. So everybody's complaining about the mask, right? Hang on a second. Okay. We are a silly people. Did I talk to you about that?
I heard that.
Yeah. That was who was that guy? Lawrence of Arabia.
Ah.
Yeah, squabbling amongst ourselves, and so I wanna just make that little.
Hey, Jack, just so you know, your mask is caught on your glasses there.
Oh, I know that. That's going to be the way the movie begins. What the hell is this? What? Okay. That's a story of our lives here, isn't it? Being troubled by the mask. Okay, so we are a silly people, and then we. What else were we going to talk about, Ray? Just to make sure we don't get too far off.
I want to have for the record, you talk about a lot about your Guiyang experience.
And I want to talk to you about yours, because you've had your own experience. So, and I gotta, hang on a second. I got this mask thingy. I don't like masks very much, but I think we're stuck with them for a couple more months. Well, anyway, we're ready to go. The guest today is Ray Mahoney, Chinese Mahanya, right?
Mahanyan, yes.
Mahanyan, yeah, okay. And this is Ray Mahoney. He's a veteran of China. What is it, about 20 or 22 years living in China, Ray?
I lived there 24 years and
24 years, and
1980s and from 2000 to 2019.
Well, I thought I was an old timer with 13 years teaching there, but then when I met you, I realized that, boy, you've got a lot better handle on the country.
You want to talk about how we met?
Yeah, I don't remember how we met.
I don't remember. I was moving to Guiyang, and I was looking for resources about the place.
Oh, and you found my website. Yeah. Okay.
And then you came to where I was staying, and you didn't tell me any of this, but you came to the room that the school had put me up in.
Okay. Okay. It's coming back to me. Let me back up. Because people don't know about this website, and I'm going to share. I've got to share a screen, and this is the website here. And now this website is tourguizhou.com, which I maintained for about 10 years in Guiyang, which is the place that I lived. And this Guiyang has got all kinds of interesting things. And I don't have a scroll bar on this screen. That's not good. But anyway, if you want to find things in China, like if you want to curious about what was happening in May in 2018, you just click on this menu over on the right-hand side, and I just randomly clicked on this. And this was a big data conference. Guiyang is considered to be the big data valley of China. And they're really playing that up. It's a takeoff on, what is it? San Francisco area was called the big something or other.
Silicon Valley?
Silicon Valley, yeah. So this is called Big Data Valley, right? And you can see, you can actually play these things. This is what I put on my website, and I filmed this from a big data conference, and they had a robot serving coffee here, and they're basically trying to inspire their population to get involved in technology. And as you can see, they've programmed this little robot so it can pour coffee. Now,
Let me add something to this. Jack put a whole lot of time into, he recorded a lot of this stuff at this conference, and then spent even more time editing it into several videos. And we were trying to put this out in the United States. One of the places that eventually got it, where it was at Stuyvesant High School in New York City.
oh, right, that was a Stuyvesant High School. We were featured there as a science feature.
Right.
I was trying to get China to cooperate with the U.S. more in the field of technology and be friendly competitors, so to speak. And so that was my whole promotion. I think the key to the future is for us, the big guys like China and U.S. to cooperate and not fight with each other in these foreign countries, but actually cooperate with each other to help build the world up.
And then just to add to this, this is in Southwest China. Most people go to Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, Shenzhen, Hong Kong, but we were in a part of China that has a reputation of being way behind.
Right.
But we're in a place that has really built itself in the last 20 years, and look at the technology they have here. And then because of its climate, it's a good place to put data farms.
All right. Now, this is Ray Mahoney, and I said Ray's been back and forth to China 24 years, and we met in Guiyang because he found this website of mine, and I always enjoyed having foreigners come to Guiyang. I was a foreigner too. So I had a lot in common with people, even though maybe I wouldn't even talk to them back in the US. But an African or an Arab or any foreigner actually living in Guiyang, we shared the same culture of being non-Chinese. So we had a kind of a bond living as foreigners in a very remote part of China. And I always tell people, they say, well, where is Guiyang? I say, well, Guiyang is as far into China as you can go before you're coming out again. And that means it's remote. And it's in the kind of the foothills of the Himalaya Mountains. It's called the Tibetan Plateau, is it, Ray? Something like that. But anyway, it's got an interesting
area.
Karst, yeah, it's like West Virginia. West Virginia has coal mines, and so does Guizhou Province. But Guizhou Province has so much more water resources. There's the start of 3 major rivers in Guizhou Province, and a lot of the Tibetan water comes through Guizhou. So anyway, this is Ray Mahoney, and I'd like you to know more about him because he's studied foreign policy at a master's in foreign policy from what school, Ray?
Columbia.
Columbia, okay. So, and you studied the Mandarin Chinese as well as Hindi?
Yes.
Okay, so that's he's
forgotten my Hindi by now, but Hindi Urdu has mostly been forgotten, but I still keep
Right.
up my Chinese.
Well, I don't think you could argue that you're not an expert on China. You've spent a lot of time in China, and mostly doing charitable work. You had one legitimate job, right? And then
I was an
eventually-
English teacher for of those
Well, okay, yeah,
of those 24 years in China. 19 of them were spent as an English teacher, but I had side non-paid things, doing various nonprofitsy sorts of things, NGO-ish things, but volunteer things.
Well, they
But
had
early on, I started off selling medical equipment.
okay, so you started in China selling medical equipment, and then you had more personal freedom and more opportunity to impact the country by
Well,
teaching. Well, Ray, you wrote a lot of articles. You didn't write that long. You lasted a couple years in Guiyang, but you definitely made an impact on my website, and I still get hits for people interested in the work that you did. And let's try to get back to that website, and maybe we can find that. Okay, this is the website itself. And anytime you're on the website and you want to get back to the home page, you got two menus. You got a menu across the top here, and you got a little English school, things like, and then you got a menu down the right-hand side too. And let's just, you mentioned karst formations. Let's just do a quick search to show you how to find stuff. Here's where it says search, and we're just going to put karst, K-A-R-S-T, right? And here's what you got. Plants of Guizhou, karst desertification and reforestation. Karst geological formations, those weird hills. And they've actually got skydivers and things like that over there too. But this is a story that Ray was responsible for, because karst formations are fairly distinctive. They have tremendous cave structures, and Ray, maybe you could mention a little bit about this article that you created.
It's not so much created, just cut and pasted.
Okay.
Not necessarily following the copyrights, I have to admit. But anyway, just for someone getting to this area, I flew into Guiyang, and wow, there it is from the airport. I could see these weird hills. We have some of that in the United States, but this is just a huge area that a lot of people go to Guangxi province, to Guilin, and see the same hills. The good part about Guiyang, or Guizhou province, in many of the places in Guiyang, is that it's at a higher elevation. It's the same limestone that has been dissolved away, and then what you are left with is all this stuff. But it's Guiyang is at a higher elevation, so you have not too cold of a winter. January is
Right.
tough, but the summers are very nice, and all this green stuff. It hasn't been an area of industrialization, thus not so much air pollution.
Oh yeah, it's very clean air, very beautiful weather. And you mentioned the moderate weather, and we already showed the big data conference, and all of the servers that house the data in China are connected to Guizhou province because of these mountain ranges, and we're at the meridian of about Miami. If you follow that line all the way around the earth, the meridian about Miami is where Guizhou province is. So it would be very warm, except it's high in the mountains. So I don't know, what are we, about a mile high or something like that? It's a very nice place. You have jungles and mountains and monkeys, things like that. But the data needs to be housed in servers. These servers are in caves, so that, I imagine if you hit Guizhou with a few nuclear bombs, you still wouldn't wipe out the data capacity of China, because these are so buried in the mountains. So it's a very secure, remote area, and servers, big databases, they like to be warm in the wintertime and cool in the summertime. And that's Guizhou province. They don't have a big heating and air conditioning bill for all those servers that they have in Guizhou province.
You want to add, Jack, that in World War II, a lot of the Chinese universities and whatnot escaped the Japanese occupation by moving inland. Next door was Yunnan province, and for a while, its capital was the capital of China. But our Guizhou University had been, all these professors had moved into that area, and it had really helped Southwest China develop.
Right, right. And when people would get in trouble with the government, they would send them to Guizhou province, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just people that they might be a little bit of trouble where they're at, and they needed people, educated people in Guizhou province, so they would be sent off to Guizhou.
And the third line, or the Sanxian, during the Cultural Revolution, and when China was thinking that it was going to get into a war with Russia and China and the United States at the same time, they were moving some industries into the inland areas that had been safe during World War II. So Guizhou benefited from this, as did places like Hubei and Chengdu, and a lot of these. There's these high-tech factories that we're not supposed to know about, but they're located inland because that's a good place to keep the secret's a secret.
Yeah, and we had Factory 53 in Guiyang, and they named all their factories by the numbers, so that if the enemy was to know where the factories were, that would be a problem with bombing and stuff. So the Chinese kind of concealed these military installations in the mountains of Guizhou, and it's still a very high-tech place. And I used to run into engineers that were working in the aviation industry, and but they really couldn't tell me a lot because it was supposed to be secret, right? So that was a very high-tech area. So China spent a lot of time trying to build up the interior. Everybody wants to go live on the ocean, and that's where the jobs were. So China's made a big push to build up places like Guizhou province. And you mentioned World War II. Ray, let me try this screen sharing again. And we're back. We should be back to the screen, and let's look for Dr. Guy, Guy. This was a doctor. This just touched me when I learned the story about the tomb of Guy Courtney. Now, let's face it, Americans and British, Chinese were brothers in arms fighting the Japanese. And there's a doctor from England.
A woman.
Dr. Guy Courtney. And this was in 2013. I ran across her tomb, and it was in a prominent place of one of the biggest parks in Guizhou province. And what happened, a British woman there went there to help the Chinese and take care of them. And there was biological warfare. I'm going to read this here. The Japanese waged biological warfare against the Chinese by trying to induce a pandemic in the population. This apparently took place in Guiyang as well. The tombstone of Guy Courtney was established in September 1985 by the Guiyang government, and it reads as follows. This memorial is in memory of Dr. Guy Courtney, a British woman doctor who came in support of the Chinese War of Resistance against Japan in 1941. Dr. Courtney died at her post in 1942 while working to prevent and cure the diseases caused by the germ warfare waged by the Japanese. And this is the forest park, and it's the tomb of Guy Courtney was a very distinctive, and you can see the tomb kind of in the background over there. And here's a memorial to the Chinese Red Cross. They had an active Red Cross trying to bail out the people who were injured in the war. Well, I'll skip forward, and you can see the inscription on Dr. Courtney's tomb. She was a hero to the Guizhou people, and while we're on this subject, there was another group of heroes. I'm going to try to find it. Flying Tigers. Let's see if we got it. No, I don't see it. But hey, Ray, we happened to land on the road. Do you remember this story? This is
Okay, so
Ray's-
this is from World War II. I think it got into places like Life magazine or Time magazine or whatever.
Right.
People assumed that it, Burma Road must be Yunnan. In fact, this was a little part of it that was in Guizhou province, and the logistics of supporting the KMT against government, the Kuomintang government who was fighting the Japanese. The Americans built, mostly Black American troops were the ones who were sent to build in Burma, which is Miandian, and other places, a road to it. Whether it was worth the effort as a whole, historians still debate that thing.
The history was Japan was going to take over Indochina and Burma, and they were going to reunite the Japanese army in India with the German army from Arabia, and the idea was to take over all of southern Asia. And the Chinese fell back from the coastal cities. There's no way Japan could have ever occupied China. There's so many people, so much land. So they fell back, and Guiyang was bombed by the Japanese bombers. And American volunteers came into the war, I think in 1940 or 41, where American flying pilots were given a leave of absence from the American Air Force, and they took jobs flying for the Chinese, fighting the Japanese in the air. And I saw an interview with a Japanese pilot, and he said, we went to bomb Guiyang once, and we saw immediately that from above, these were not Chinese pilots. He knew they were American pilots attacking. They broke up the bombing formation, and they never did bomb Guiyang again because of the support of the American fighter pilots. And the resupply of China came through Yunnan province from Burma. It's called the Burma Road. And people assume the Burma Road was in Yunnan, the province next door to Guizhou. But what is this, 21 curves, or what's the name of that road?
24 zig.
24.
Zig, that was named then.
24 zigs, yeah.
Okay.
So they went up the side of the mountain, and And they finally, somebody found this road. This was a lost road. The locals knew it was there, but historians and geographers, they didn't know where this road was. And it was finally photographed from the air. And China was resupplied from India and Burma down this road. And it was a very important lifeline for China during World War II. Well, we Ray and I have kind of a minority opinions in terms of how to deal with China. Certainly, Ray can speak for himself, but I would like to see the U.S. get along with China, and it was a big part of my time in China was to teach young people about American culture and basically things that they might not pick up in China, like American movies could teach English, and we taught a lot of English by showing American movies and getting kids involved in movies.
And songs.
And songs. Oh, you're
Mhm.
right. We taught them a lot of songs. But it was a fun time, and the young people really responded to foreigners. I would go around and I would talk to different high schools too. Anybody that wanted to invite a foreigner to come talk to their high school, I was always willing to go there, and we'd have nice chats. And it was really a lot of free speech emanating out of those schools. As long as you weren't openly critical of the Chinese government, you could pretty much talk about anything. And I never really got in trouble. Nobody reminded me that I shouldn't be talking about certain subjects. I just knew that sensitive issues are not something you really want to promote, not expect to live in China, right? I remember when I first got to China, and I think it was 2003, we were invading Iraq, and I got invited to a high school along with a lady that was teaching with me, and she said that all Americans don't want to go into Iraq, and President Bush is wrong. And I knew that was wrong because I had just come from the U.S., and the U.S. was supportive of going into Iraq. So we had a little argument in front of the kids, and it was kind of an awkward time. One of the children asked me, do you support fighting in Iraq? Would you support the American soldiers in Iraq? And I said, well, let me ask you a question. If your country sent you halfway around the world, like to Africa or something, and asked you to fight for the country, would you want your countrymen to support you over in Africa? And the teacher interrupted and said, I agree with you. You have to support your own people, and if your country sends people to war, you really got to support your own people. And anyway, those are the kinds of things that we would just routinely talk to people about. And I've always thought everybody's entitled to their own opinion, and everybody's right, because they have good reasons for what they believe. And when you have that basic respect for people, the issues aren't nearly as important as listening to what people have to say and attaching importance to how other people feel. And I think Ray did the same thing. Is you have your own experiences along those lines, right, Ray?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well,
Let's another person to bring in. This isn't on the topic you were just talking about, but we went to a guy living at a botanical garden in Guiyang.
yeah.
And,
oh, yeah.
Yeah, and he was doing. He's a first-rate scientist. I think it was coming from Canada, and he was looking at in Chinese medicine, what are some of the things that might work against different types of cancers. So
Right.
applying, modern day biological science to those questions. but he was Iranian guy, Iranian Jewish
Yeah,
guy.
I'm not going to use his name because I didn't talk to him about being
Okay.
on TV, but he runs a key lab, one of 100 major labs in China. It's called a key lab. It's funded by the Chinese government, and he was a biologist, and he would spend most of his time in Canada writing grants, trying to get, anywhere from 25,000 to 50,000 for certain experiments, and spent a lot of his time writing grants. Well, one of his students went back to China and talked to her bosses about her old professor might come and work for China. And he was actually recruited by the Chinese government. And he said, well, I couldn't go there unless I was guaranteed that I had a laboratory that had everything I needed to do my job. And I don't want to spend time writing grant applications and things like that. I want to do research. And he literally gave him a list of everything that he wanted to create a modern biology lab. The top equipment, the microscopes, electron microscope, I don't know if he had a gene splicing equipment or not, but he got everything he asked for. And he went to China, and he's done a lot of scientific studies for the Chinese, trying to use exotic plants and to create natural medicines. And it's really important research to China, and hopefully the rest of the world will benefit as well. But he basically ran out of funding when he was in Canada. He couldn't use his degrees and his ability to its max, and now he's got a good situation working for the Chinese.
And just on that topic of Chinese traditional medicine, there was a woman, Chinese researcher who got a Nobel Prize 3-4 years ago for just that. Some stuff that was used in
malaria
CTM.
Cure. Malaria cure, right?
A malaria cure for people going in the 1960s. Chinese troops being sent to help the North Vietnamese in the Vietnam War. But that's how it all got started. But it actually shows that there is some in this 2,000-year history of trying this and that different plants. Some of that stuff is worthy of being further researched. And
well,
our friend who was who we he was in a botanical garden in Guiyang,
right,
and living there, and then equipped with the best equipment to go through these different compounds.
Every one of these subjects is like an iceberg. You can touch it, but there's so much more going on below the surface. You mentioned Chinese traditional medicine. Well, we've got a little medicine problem in the U.S. right now. We have major pharmacies promoting expensive products. And there's products that don't get promoted that are relatively cheap. We call them traditional medicines, or what is it, natural foods, things like that, that are cures for diseases that have been around for a long time. And this woman that got was it Nobel Prize, was it? They tried to take it away from her because she didn't do the discovery herself. She knew from her experience that there was a cure for malaria back in 600 AD, and it was used extensively until eventually it didn't work. What happened was people got used to that medicine, and it didn't cure the malaria like it used to. But she went back into the archives, 1,500-year-old documents, and found the formula for this medicine, and basically she recreated the medicine in the modern environment, the 1,500-year-old cure for malaria. And sure enough, it worked this time again, because there had been enough passage of time that the medicine was useful again. So, but Chinese traditional medicine has got a lot of solutions that we don't know about in the U.S. I always thought acupuncture was quackery, right? Until I got there, and I had problems with arthritic thumb, and I tried to get it treated all kinds of places till they said, you just got to have surgery. That's all you can do. Next time I was in China, my acupuncture friend said, sure, we can treat that, no problem. So he put these needles all over my body, basically, and connected with electric wires and run the current through. And after 3-4 weeks of treatments, my thumb didn't hurt anymore. They had influenced the nervous system connected to the thumb to the extent that the pain that was being caused by the thumb arthritis was greatly diminished. I still have a little bit of pain, but I'm sure if I could get back to China, I could get rid of that pain as well with more treatments. So there's just so much we can learn from each other, Chinese and Americans in particular. We've been curious about each other forever, and we have missionaries. We've had missionaries for 200-300 years in China. I think one of my other videos, I mentioned that General Stilwell in the 1920s knew of 50,000 Western missionaries throughout China. So we have Ray and I have been involved in a tradition of going to China and trying to bring those people into a modern situation, cooperative situation. And I'm hoping we can get back to that. Right now, it's been going the wrong way. It's got me scratching my head. And how about you? What's your impression of relations between China and the U.S. now?
That's a big topic. I want to stay on that, but let me on the missionary topic.
Oh, yeah.
Near where we lived, Jack was a teacher different places, but including at the Normal University, Guizhou Normal. And I was living up the road from there. But in between us, there was a Catholic cathedral that had been built in the 1870s by French. At the time, France was down in Vietnam, and was sending up their missionaries up into China. And this is a surprise to me, the scale of it, the number of people that it took to build. You had pictures of it from the 1870s, and I imagine from before that. There were a couple of saints that a couple of Chinese people who became saints because of they got killed 20 years before that. But that was cool. So the missionary topic. Another topic I wanted to bring up, Jack, when I first got there, you invited me to a poker game. I was too zonked to do it.
Oh, yeah, the poker game. First, let's finish the church, because I
Okay,
did mention this already on the series.
Okay.
Because we have the religious persecution issue in China. These are two parishioners. Can you see this, Ray?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So these are two of the students at the Catholic church and school. And Ray and I.
The guy I got to know was a student of history at, I think, Guizhou Normal, where you were teaching.
Guizhou
I forgot where he went, but he was also a priest in training.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
and
Right,
he was a priest, who was going around on his skateboard.
Well, it doesn't look like he was abused that much.
Right.
They say that Chinese are torturing Christians, and not all over. This is a 150-year-old picture of the Catholic Church that we were at, and this is the Catholic Church as it is today. So it's very interesting. the connections with the, centuries ago, and the work that the Westerners did, we'll call them missionaries for lack of a better word, is still
Well, full
going on
disclosure
there.
on this topic, and neither
Okay.
Jack nor I are Catholic, but this was just kind of interesting, kind of cross-cultural
Right.
contact. You were not comfortable going to the church when I rang you up and said, "Come on over and and see this place."
Oh yeah, but yeah, I'm glad you did that because it's beautiful.
Yep.
It's a beautiful church. I thought I was going to be intruding, and they were just friendly and welcomed us, and it didn't matter that it might be Catholic or not. We were all brothers, so to speak, right? Brothers and sisters.
And further on that topic, I go to a Unitarian church now, so all this is okay too. But bring in Buddhism and Hinduism and Taoism and anything like that is okay too. The official Communist Party's atheism is also welcome there too.
The proselytizing. What is it? Proselytizing.
Proselytizing.
Proselytizing. Well, anyway, going around preaching at people and trying to recruit people into your religious sect is kind of taboo in China. So if you get big organized churches start up, they can get shut down. But I haven't really heard of people being interfered with in their personal religious studies. I'm sure that's happened, and it does happen periodically. We had during the Cultural Revolution, Mao Zedong had some people cut off the heads of the Buddhist statues. They would do trim inside of these churches, and the trim would have these little 2 or 3 inch statues all down the side of the wall, and little statues of Buddha. And on Mao's orders, they just went in there and chopped off the little heads of each of the Buddhas and left the rest of the church intact.
Buddhist temple.
Yeah. So anyway, that there is some friction with religion, but it is permitted, and they're not too aggressive.
We were English teachers, so we knew plenty, especially Jack, you knew the Christians who were there, who were doing many good things. They were helping the orphanages with who had crippled kids of all sorts of varieties find homes abroad sometimes. Sometimes they would be adopting them themselves. But it was a very, there were plenty of covert missionaries who were serving as English teachers.
This was the ticket to extend your missionary activities into China, and you could basically, the young people would come up to you after class, say, "Are you a Christian?" And I would typically say, "Yes, I'm a Christian, but I don't talk a lot about it here in China." And he goes, "Well, so am I, blah, blah, blah." So they would actually solicit me for information about Christianity and, whether there's services around and things like that. And I could introduce them to people that would actually teach them the Bible in Chinese. There was a lot of that going on. And I took a few Bibles to China, but it's not anything I really advertised. But anyway, yeah, we got along good.
I went to the Protestant church in the middle of the city that one of the fellow teachers, Chinese teachers I was with, that was where she had gone, and she was in the choir. And I enjoy the music side of things. And I went in one Sunday afternoon and listened to some of the hymns being played. Only a few of the hymns were familiar. I come from a Southern Baptist background.
Right. Yeah. Same music. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that is wonderful. We had on Christmas time, we could go to schools and give out candy. I would dress up like Santa Claus and meet a lot of people. And I ran into some Dutch people that were basically my sect. Mine was Congregational Church. And we did Christmas hymns in front of 900 youngsters.
Mm.
It'd gather the whole school together into the gym, and they'd listen to the Americans and do the Christmas program. And that included Santa Claus, and my buddy wanted to give him a lot more information about Jesus, but the authorities weren't real interested in that. They were good with the hymns and stuff like that, but they didn't want us to be in the school actually teaching people about Jesus too much, you know. Santa Claus, fine, but Jesus, that was troublemaker, right?
The secular Christmas was fine, and
Yeah.
given China produces most of the stuff for our Christmas celebrations.
Yeah, plastic Christmas trees and Christmas bulbs are all made in China. Yeah.
Right.
Right. Well, what else can we tell people about our time in
Let's
China?
talk about the Ghana teachers from Ghana that we just happened to be in
Oh,
a city that had a
Cosmo.
huge number of English teachers from Ghana that were from the ones I bumped into were from middle class, upper middle class families back home in Ghana. So
Right.
they came from from families of substance there, and I don't know. Every city has a different mix of different people from around the world. But our Guiyang, at the time we were there, when I was there, 2010 to 13, had a big group of people from Ghana.
Yeah.
Nice
And
people, good teachers.
what we got into was a lot of foreigners where they spoke English, so they could come as English teachers, but a lot of them had pretty thick accents for their native country. But Ghana is an English-speaking country, and we had a lot of people from Ghana. In Russia, there's a lot. They're not English-speaking people, but they've got a tremendous English program in Russia, and I have friends that are, excellent English teachers that are Russians.
And the woman that in the room that both of us lived at 10 years apart at the school, my next door neighbor was a woman from Ukraine who had been in the Middle
Right.
East for a while, but her English was excellent and she was an English teacher
She was
there.
teaching English. Oh, by the way, that school that we did, I don't know if we got any pictures of that online or not, but
Pushing. Okay.
yeah, it's called Fuxing Waiguo Yu Xuexiao. And let's see if we've got a picture of it. This search engine is very handy. You can put in nothing found. Okay. Well, this school was next to a forest reserve, and it was
You might try the Canada, U.S. international.
yeah, there
school.
was a Canadian English school as well.
No, but the name of ours was, I don't know if Canada, U.S. International School was.
Oh, right.
Tagged on to.
Well, the school that Ray got hired into when he first came to Guiyang was the school that I taught at 10 years prior when I came to Guiyang. And I used to play basketball with the kids, and really, I bonded with those high school kids, and they called me Shaq. No, they called me O'Near, which is short for Shaquille O'Neal. And that was because I was a head taller than most of the students and built a lot closer to Shaq than to a Chinese kid, right? So they named me O'Near. And when I would drive to the basket, it was like a bowling ball going through pins, as the kids really did not want to get in front of me when I went to the basket. But we just had fun working with the kids and teaching them English, and a lot of them couldn't care less about English, and that was okay. They could they could learn to be friends, and they sure enough, they did learn some English, even though they didn't want to, you know. I don't know what else we got here.
That's your, we were talking yesterday, Oakland University. I was just impressed
Right.
looking at your information and looking further online about hundreds of people from the 1980s from that school in Michigan, or arranged through that school, who got from Michigan to Guiyang, and their stories. And these people, if we could do a Facebook group of people who had been specifically from that area of Michigan and got to that area of Guiyang, and to get their pictures and their stories and all assembled.
Well, Ray, I do have a little bit of information about Oakland University in the Guizhou province. And this is how I ended up in Guizhou, in Guiyang. I graduated from Oakland University in '74, and my sister became a professor at Oakland the Guizhou people had no English teachers who had spoken English with English-speaking people. So in 1987, the Education Commission from Guizhou province came to the United States looking for teachers to bring to Guizhou. They had a simple proposal that they made, that we'll pay your expenses. If you pay to fly to China, we'll cover all your food and medicine and recreation while you're teaching our students. So Oakland University took them up on that. I won't get into the politics of it, but it's a program that started in '87, and I would say it's about 32, 33 years old, where we've, except for the pandemic, they've sent delegations of anywhere from 4 to 12 English teachers. Most of them are teachers. I got into it. I was related to a teacher. That's kind of how I got into it. But I went there. I got trained at Oakland University in how to teach these students, and I had 25 middle school English teachers in my class, and we all had 25 students. That was the agreement, and we had people scattered around the Guizhou province, and if there was only 4 English teachers there, that would be 100 middle school teachers. Got 4 weeks of intensive English training, and where you had to speak English all the time in class. They never did, but we tried to force them to speak English. And if they had 12 teachers over there, that would be about 550 or 600 middle school teachers got practice in English through Oakland University. So the as it stands now, Oakland University is in the middle of the automobile industry down by Detroit, and Guizhou province has got a lot of robotics, and you saw part of it in a video. Smart cars. It's a high-tech area, so those relationships still exist. Where Oakland University has got a lot of friends, Guizhou province, and we know a lot of people from Guizhou province too that have come. Each year we would have a couple Guizhou people go to Oakland University to get master's degrees from Oakland University. So it's been a successful relationship, and I hope when the leaders of the countries start thinking about the future of the world, that we're going to, I hope to be working with the Chinese again sometime to make the world better, right?
Let me put a plug in for that one. I got my dates mixed up. I was 2014 to 15 in Guiyang. But right before I got there, I was on a summer program similar to what you had. Your guys were there for a lot for a whole academic year or two. But there was a Hong Kong nonprofit that was taking American and Canadian teachers, many of them former Hong Kong residents, Chinese people, but to train in the same way, to train teachers during the summertime in conversational English. We were in various cities, or the program was in various cities through the years in Guizhou.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully those things can continue post COVID.
Well, yeah, it's going to be a while getting back. I think we had two world leaders, President Trump and President Xi, who had a very similar attitudes, very similar nationalistic attitudes that felt that there was just too much going on, too much trouble, too much corruption, too much of everything going on between the U.S. and Chinese people. And both countries have drawn back and trying to reduce the dependence on each other, and they had reasons for it. And we're seeing some of them right now when you have to depend on very long supply lines to get the cheapest price. It's not as reliable, not as good. And so anyway, we've gotten, I want to say racism. I think there's a better ethnocentricity, maybe. People don't want to have their ethnicity, their culture watered down by other big countries. And the Chinese are worried about that. And I know just the flack I get from people who say, what are you doing over in China? Are you Chinese? You want to move there? Blah, 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 So there's suspicion coming from both sides of the ocean. That reminds me of a funny story where I was drinking alcohol with a number of Communist Party officials. This happened quite a bit. I got to know a lot of friends that were in the government, and they introduced me to, they knew I was no real threat, basically. So I got to know a lot of them, and we were drinking, and one of the guys got too drunk, and he said, we got to have a war between the U.S. and China because China's getting bullied all over the world, and it's because the U.S. is making trouble for China, and his friends who were also in the government were trying to shut him up, right? Look, this guy's a guest. You don't want to talk to him like that. But I said, no, we need to talk about these things. We should be able to talk about anything over here. So I said to this guy who was really drunk, he was actually trying to pick a fight. At least it sounded like he was trying to pick a fight. And I said, a lot of Americans agree with you. They think that there should be a war as well. Because in America, we're very concerned. You're 4 or 5 times as big as America, and you're growing a lot faster. And there's a lot of people in the military, especially, that says, we should fight China soon because every year they get bigger and stronger, and we should be fighting them now before they get too big. And anyway, the conversation just died down after I said that. We got on to other drinks, toasting each other, and we're friends again, and no more talk about war between the U.S. and China, and I was kind of proud of myself. I dispatched that conversation fairly quickly, but yeah, there's a real culture shock between the countries. And the pandemic, it was happening before the pandemic hit. And just to be clear, in January of 2020, I heard about this pandemic coming, and I was in China for 2003 when the SARS epidemic hit, and it was the same. Huh? Yeah,
too.
yeah. It was the same cover up. Everybody was saying, oh, we don't have a problem with the pandemic. It's safe to come to China on tourism. And they were trying to get people to come to China even though they were having a pandemic. And then suddenly one day, and it happened on one day, we had a press conference with all Western journalists. And Hu Jintao was the president of China at the time. And he said, well, we wanted to have a press conference because we've been covering up this pandemic. It was a mistake to try to cover up the pandemic, and we're going to do what the World Health Organization tells us to do, and we're inviting everybody in to help us fight this pandemic. And sure enough, they did everything they could to fight the pandemic in 2003. And they actually turned around on a dime, and that was the first time I've seen a real authoritarian country that has its people behind them turn on a dime. They went from worrying about Taiwan and international relations to suddenly SARS, SARS, SARS. That's what every news video was about, SARS, it seemed like. And they beat that disease back in just a few months. So I was able to come back. I went home for the summer in May, and I came back in September again. And they had their little pandemic under control. And I think that's when they started, Chinese and the US started cooperating on research. And I think Wuhan was part of that research that took place between the United States and China to try to get ready for future pandemics, because it was clear that with airlines going around the world and people traveling so much, that these pandemics can take off, at the drop of a hat. And in 2020, when I first heard about this pandemic, I knew immediately that it was a big deal. Guiyang is so remote that we didn't have any. It was the only province in China that didn't have any SARS in 2003. And I think it was because it was so remote. But in the first month of the pandemic in China, in January of 2020, we had about 40 cases in Guiyang of this new COVID virus. And so the World Health Organization and China, and I think even the US, said there's no evidence of human transmission, that it comes from, we think it comes from bats and snakes. And Guiyang was way up in the mountains, and that was a long way for bats and snakes to travel in order to infect humans. So I knew from the first month I heard about this pandemic, I knew there was a lot of liars. A lot of people claiming they knew what was going on when we didn't know what was going on. All we knew, it was very contagious. And Ray, you remember, were you there in China during
I was down in Shanghai, and yeah, everything closed down.
when the pandemic hit?
I'm sorry, SARS. Okay,
SARS
you're not talking,
hit,
okay.
yeah, right,
SARS.
right.
I was in Shanghai, and some of at university had taught it before. A lot of foreigners left, and I went back and it took their place for that semester. But you're
Okay.
talking about, I was already back in the States for
Okay.
ST.
Well, it's just the difference between the first SARS and the COVID was spectacular, because the COVID spread so much faster that I knew immediately this is serious, because it had spread to Guiyang in the first few days of the pandemic. And when the Chinese, they literally locked down the cities. You couldn't travel between cities. You had to get quarantined. And it took them about 6 weeks to 2 months to literally wipe out that virus inside the borders of China. And I knew that the US was not prepared for a pandemic. The things I heard from the government officials were literally wrong. I'll never forget, I think it was the beginning of February, I remember Fossey came out and said, Americans have nothing to worry about at this time, about this new virus is really nothing to worry about at this time. You always added at this time, you know. And I thought, well, that's totally wrong. We should be really worried about this because there's no immunity to it. And so we screwed up the tests, and we had some guys going on about how you shouldn't worry about wearing masks. We need the masks for the doctors. You don't need any masks, you know. You know, it's like the government saying, you don't need no stinking masks. So I mean, so we got some really bad information from the very beginning, and people speaking in absolute terms, like they've done the research. They know this virus isn't that serious, or they know, they basically claim to know a lot. And from the beginning, I thought, these guys, they don't know what they're dealing with, you know.
Let me add, I visited your class in Guiyang when I was passing through to get my stuff on my own way back to the United States in 2019. But you were teaching at the Guiyang airport, teaching English to people of your students. Many of them were engaged in public health aspects of, you know, working at an airport.
Right. So it was the department heads of the airport that I was teaching. And this is like literally 1 year before the pandemic hit. The airport personnel was getting ready for a test where WHO people were going to come and go through the whole airport and interview them on how they operate. And they got a designation as a result of that test as an international sanitary airport. They had protocols for what if somebody comes in and they're sick? How do you handle that? What if a plane crashes? How do you handle that? What's your hospital capacity? And basically, I was taught these guys English, enough medical English. It was a specialty, right? Medical English to learn how to talk to the WHO officials who were going to give them their test. So yeah, I don't think I put anything in there because I didn't put that in the website.
You also showed them the 2011 movie Contagion, which also you know, touches on exactly what was happening. You know,
I'm glad you mentioned that, Ray, because I do have that online, and a
great way to learn English through little clips from Hollywood movies where the English is that, you know, English subtitles are there, but a little piece of it that students can imitate.
Okay, I had to go through
the spelling.
I couldn't put contagion on the website because
no, I think you misspelled it just now.
No, what happened was websites with the word contagion were blocked. And I couldn't put that on a website because it would always get blocked when I renamed it worse than a virus, then it went through. So anyway, this is an update of this is not the airport. This is basically in October of 2000. The pandemic has come and gone, and most people are not wearing masks. There's still a few people wearing masks, but that was
2020.
That was in October of 2020.
Okay.
The virus had disappeared about April and May. They had successfully suppressed it. yeah, what else did we? Oh, more than a cold. This is what I had to call it, because if I called it a contagion, then the website would be blocked. And when you taught people English, these were doctors, so there were some medical people in my class, and I would teach them to speak about the contagion.
Mm.
Okay, we don't have any sound on here. Well, that's too bad.
These are clips from that movie.
Yeah, these are clips
Okay.
from the movie. We don't have the sound. I don't know. Next time we do this, we're going to have to put the sound on.
Let me do a little bit on some other movies. I think something about a dragon. I forgot what.
Oh, yeah.
You have spent a
Here, you
huge
can
amount
find
of time.
you can find the whole school. I took a lot of time to create a school to teach English, and that happened about the same time I was asked to leave China. But we had How to Train Your Dragon is one of the issues about training dragons. Then how a virus is spread, and also tennis. We had a lot of different kinds of things. These are all movie clips. There's McEnroe and Borg, and they were able to teach English by emulating what these guys are saying.
But you did a lot of time taking these movies and chopping up into edible pieces and
Right.
putting it on the website, and also helping students with get through the script. All this stuff exists on the internet for popular TV shows. Big Bang Theory and Friends and all that other stuff has
Well, I
have been
taught them
used.
the technique. The technique is, I said, listen, I've got some of the best English in the world. It's the Midwest Northern dialect. And that's the same kind of Putonghua. That's like in China, they use Beijing Chinese. Well, I speak Northern dialect English, Midwest dialect English. But the best speakers of English are the actors themselves. And I had just a tremendous number of clips where these people are talking to each other in English, and then I would put the subcaptions in there for the people to speak. And I don't know if we've got them here or not. No, it's down here. And yeah, I wish I did
Let's
have
hope
sound.
this becomes a trend, and that other English teachers for places working everywhere around the world will use this as a way. It's totally against the copyrights laws, but maybe they would tolerate it for.
I would disagree
this.
with that, Ray,
Okay.
because I have less than 30-second clips,
Okay.
and there is a fair use aspect here.
Okay. For
And-
teachers, they're a little bit more tolerant.
Okay. So anyway, I would put the Chinese and the English together, and then they could speak these words in English, learn how to speak them in English, and then they would know what they're talking about because they've got the Chinese written there. So yeah, that was an interesting angle. So yeah,
Another topic is Jack is a in the 1980s and 90s was an elected township supervisor in
right.
I forgot the name of the place in Michigan, but you know how
East Bay
politics.
Township.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you're a Republican. I'm a Democratic libtard, but your talk, the people that follow you on your Facebook page are, many of them are Trumpists, and they know your experience. You've known them for many years, and you have interesting conversations. You've been GOP from the get-go, but let's talk about those issues that are. I'm from Louisville, Kentucky. We had the same deindustrialization issues going on as factories were closing, and I worked summer job at a furniture factory. I don't know the specifics of that, but those type of jobs are the things that were closing in the United States and opening in China. You went to school near Detroit, and the same, the Rust Belt, the closing of factories as they moved to
Right.
Mexico and China, and now Bangladesh and Vietnam and other places. But those are important issues that are very much in the news, and we need to
That
talk
flushing
about it.
sound.
Yeah.
That flushing sound is the sounds of American jobs going down the drain. Yeah.
But also we have news of this past week of Intel building a chip factory in Ohio,
Right.
in Columbus, and we have some of this reshoring going on. All those issues are and the just-in-time thing of having you're having the supply chains that have now, since COVID and other things, gotten disrupted.
Yeah, 30 years
re-
ago,
yeah.
offshoring was the
Right,
word.
right.
And this is reshoring or onshoring, or basically bringing these jobs back. And,
Plus automation and eventually artificial intelligence will help some of that too. But
yeah. Well, I'm hoping that, we can just share information and start making the pie bigger, because what people don't realize, when you cut immigration and you cut world trade, you're cutting money out of the economy. All of these immigrants coming to the U.S. and working on the jobs that Americans don't like. We could use a lot more workers here in this country, because there are too many jobs and not enough people to do it. And these foreigners that come to the U.S. and send the money back to their home countries, they're repatriating, or what do they call that? Payments to the family back in the home country. Was remittances. They're remitting the money back to their home country. And that's good for their home countries, and it's good for us as well. And the Chinese should be doing that. They're not doing it. We're not doing it. We've cut that part of the economy down, and there's literally less wealth in the world because of it. So yeah, I'm hoping that we can get more immigration, controlled immigration, with a legitimate immigration bill, where immigrants that come to the U.S. have to pay taxes and pay towards Social Security. I think I'm okay on Social Security, but these young people coming up, they're paying a lot more into Social Security than they're going to get out. And if we don't have an increasing labor force, more and more people working and paying taxes, it's going to be hard for all the young people to support all of us retirees, So we need the economy to be growing, and we need to be able to get along with people of different cultures. And that's kind of where we came in, Ray, was we were talking about culture shock and getting along with people of different cultures. And that's what I think we've got to get back to. We tried to teach them in China. Now we got to do that here in the U.S. because we got so many different cultures. Seems like the only thing people know how to do anymore is insult each other. And we, I think I said last time we were going to need another episode to really talk about how to get this country back on track. But it's really should be quite simple. If we are nice to each other, and respect each other's opinions, I think the country's going to get back on track, and we're going to be able to reorganize the country so that people respect each other and work with each other.
My grandfather from the 1950s to 70s was working in a GE plant in Louisville, Kentucky, making refrigerators and similar white goods. My mom had a job after I was born, and my brother got here. But that plant, a very big plant, was bought by a Chinese refrigerator maker, Haier.
Oh, really?
5 years or so ago. They kept the GE name, General Electric, but they paid for that. But people think they're buying an American product. In fact, they're buying something made by what's now made by a Chinese company, albeit mostly by American workers. But that was a trend of 5-6 years ago, where Chinese were buying American plants. I think that's probably gone by the way. There's a lot less of that now. But that's an interesting topic of us, the city governments, state governments around the country having relations with Chinese local places. That's a taboo topic, but it's an interesting one. You talked to, or I read about the Arab workers in Detroit. I went back to Louisville, and someone told me there were 10,000 Chinese in Louisville, Kentucky now.
Wow.
And they're not working on the assembly lines, but they are involved in many different aspects of it. Plus, I didn't vote for him, but Mitch McConnell has a wife who was born in Taiwan. Those are interesting things that are happening now. The whole cross-cultural stuff you were talking about, the whole cross-cultural, cross-country dating, that goes on when as English teachers we saw this a lot, a huge amount of gossip. But these things are 30 years out. What do they produce in terms of us, our identities, and our?
Well, that's right. I think that I've got about a dozen years of teaching in Guiyang, and a lot of these are young people that made friends. And if some leader of their country tells them that Americans are bad, these young people are going to say, well, I knew an American or more than one American, and they didn't seem bad, So they've got independent knowledge, not just what the people in their government or the talking heads on the news tell them. I think we have firsthand knowledge of each other, and that's the best. So anyway, I think we're winding down.
Talk about how I went into your apartment when you were at Guizhou Normal, and you were writing in the brush pen. You were writing different characters, and you were very proud of that. And your Jax Tea Party introduction has a picture of you writing.
That brush, that is the Chinese brush that I'm writing with, and that was.
Make a plug,
it's
Jack,
artistic.
for more people to learn Chinese.
Yeah, well,
we saw a lot of your friends the people I knew through you were people at Guizhou Normal, foreigners who were learning Chinese in the classes there. And that was many different motivations, but very interesting thing that I hope after COVID will continue.
Well, yeah, it's got to, we've got to learn to cooperate. And you mentioned Detroit, and they've got a place called Dearborn in Detroit. And that has a large Arab population, maybe one of the biggest Muslim populations outside of the Middle East. And they lived with blacks and whites. And I used to go shopping, and a friend lives down there. I'd go to the grocery store, and you'd have blacks and whites and, Muslims, and they're all occupying the same place, and they're opening doors to each other. They're smiling at each other, and they're totally different cultures. but you can tell that they appreciate being in a cross-cultural situation where they're not under attack, where they can just live with their neighbors and enjoy people of different cultures. And it really does make your life more interesting when you're learning about people of different cultures. Shoot, a lot of Americans think that pizza and tacos and all that stuff is American food, right? Chinese food is, we have Chinese American food, right? In Shanghai, they even have restaurants where they serve American Chinese food because there were Chinese that lived in the U.S. and learned to like the Chinese food that was served in the Chinese stores in the U.S. So
And get a fortune cookie.
right, right, for sure, and learn how to eat with chopsticks. So that's the other part of it. So yeah. Anyway, this has been good, Ray. I think we can talk about some other issues too, when the time comes. Ray, you write a newsletter
I
that
cut and
basically.
paste. I
Well,
just
I know
did
it's
stuff.
it's like you did for the website. You would find links to information and give us those links, and then we can find out more about whatever particular subject they want to talk about. Uh, there's there's military things, there's cultural things. The Olympics is a big thing now coming up, so yeah, I'm hoping that we can get back on track where we have a good communication going around the world. Because if we don't know about each other and not sensitive to each other, that's asking for trouble. So we need to learn about each other. And when I was in China that last year I was there, I was determined to stay there as long as I possibly could because all the journalists had been sent home. The New York Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, all of these, Bloomberg, they didn't have offices in China after the Chinese government broke away from the media. So I felt like I was one of the few witnesses around that was really seeing what was happening in China. And
And I was following you as you were my model. What do I do? I'm 64 now. So what do I do in my retirement? I can be like Jack, go in every 2 months. You have to get out of the country for a tourist visa thing.
That was a good dream, wasn't it? That worked for a while. Yeah, I had kids coming over, getting their lessons, and then I didn't even have to go out to a school. I could just stay at home and teach, tutoring. But yeah, we're back into a different world right all of a sudden. So
let's hope we can get back to something like what we had pre-COVID.
Well, everything is in cycles, isn't it?
Yep.
You get back, you look back at the pandemic, and then we came out of the pandemic. The Roaring '20s was great again, and we got along with the Chinese, and then the wars came up. So hopefully we can get through these disagreements without more wars. And of all the things that Trump did right was trying to keep us out of the wars. He did not want to send American troops into wars and try to pull us out of the ones we were already in. And so got to give him credit for not screwing things up too, because we've had leaders that they're talking to the cameras, whatever gives them the best ratings is what they're going to say. And I'm hoping the American people will let them know that we want some more positive messages coming out of our leaders, and not always this negative stuff.